The armies of Sauron were horrible. Orcs, trolls and foul men who gathered under the banners of the Red Eye and covered the world in darkness and horror again and again. But these were not the Dark Lord's most hideous minions, far from it. For there was another kind, more primal, more bestial. Demonic monsters that tore elves and humans to pieces, that took the fortresses of the free peoples by storm, and that sometimes even surpassed the fire-breathing dragons and Balrogs with their brutal strength. These were the beasts of Sauron, the werewolves. Welcome, Eldonyar. I'm happy to see so many new faces here. I hope to see even more of you next time when we will dive into the unexplored depths under the mountains, where no dwarf ever came, and even Durin's Bane feared treading. The dark places where the nameless ones live. So be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be reminded when the next chapter starts. But this week we will learn about the werewolves of Middle-earth. The werewolves in the sagas of Middle-earth are fundamentally different from the monsters you all might have heard of before. They are by no means cursed humans who turn into bloodthirsty monsters at night, not even under a full moon. No, in the world of Arda, they are a far more cruel ploy of evil. When Sauron swore allegiance to the Dark Lord Morgoth, countless millennia before he became the Lord of the Rings, he also learned the forbidden arts of evil from his new master. Over time, he became his master's most able servant, and participated in all his master's nefarious and dark deeds, until he turned into a dark sorcerer of breathtaking power. Since Morgoth always lusted after turning the works of others to evil, and breeding new minions of darkness in the dungeons of his infernal fortresses, Sauron was of great help to him. The origin of the werewolves thus goes back to that early time, when the world was still illuminated by the two trees of Valinor, when Sauron held command over the great fortress of Angband, and the world was, at first glance, at peace. Because even in those ages, Sauron dealt with wolves, who, along with the first orcs, made up the bulk of the hordes of evil. But those wolves were just animals, and not really different from the wolves of our time. They were not beasts for mighty war, but Sauron knew how to change that. Using black magic, he imprisoned tortured spirits in the wolf's body, imbuing them with evil will and power, turning them into cruel hellbeasts, driven by their own torment and haunting the world for centuries with red-hot eyes and venomous bites. There are two possibilities as to the nature of these lost spirits. A majority of them are originally to have been elvish souls. Within the world of Arda, elves consist of an earthly body inhabited by an immortal spirit. When the body was killed, the spirit lived on in the world. Normally, it was then summoned to Valinor, where it lingered in the halls of Mandos, and after a period of time could be re-shrouded in a physical form, and thus be reborn. However, some would have been intercepted and held captive in Middle-earth by the power of Morgoth. Against its will, the spirit was dragged into the depths of the dread fortress Angband to be subjected to the torture of the evil that resided there. And in these dungeons, some of those spirits would, through both torture and dark magic, be re-shrouded in the body of a wolf. A new werewolf was born. Henceforth the spirit was locked in this same wolf body for all eternity, and only its destruction could set the soul free. The most powerful werewolves, however, probably have a different origin. Instead of the elvish soul, they were most likely infused with the disembodied essence of a fallen Maya. These were godlike spirits, of the same kind as Sauron or the Balrogs. The weaker of them, who had lost their original bodies or never had one at all, could, by being incarnated into these new wolf bodies, roam Arda as werewolves, vastly superior to their already powerful and ferocious lessers. The first of these dread spawn was named Draugluin, the Blue Wolf. He is considered the sire of all werewolves afterwards, for his pups were raised in Angband, and when they were fully grown, the same fate would befall them. A tormented spirit entered them, bound to the wolf's body by Sauron or Morgoth's power, and a new hellbeast was born, ready to join the wars against elves and men. A whole host was thus, through long breeding by Sauron, raised in the dungeons of Angband, and when, at last, it was loosed upon the lands of the living, there was no escape. It was in the Dagor Bragolach, the fourth great battle of Beleriand, that Sauron marched south with his army of werewolves. His destination was the elven watchtower of Minas Tirith, built by Galadriel's brother Finrod, and not to be confused with the eponymous Minas Tirith in Gondor. The many noble high elf warriors stationed in that fortress did not stand a chance. Sauron's magic descended upon the defenders like a cloud of darkness and terror, and then, when the werewolves fell upon them, the carnage was begun. The tower was taken by storm, and afterwards turned into a place of terror called Tol in Gauroth, the Isle of the Werewolves. However, the mightiest werewolf that ever walked the fields of Arda was not to be bred by Sauron. It was one of Draugluin's cubs, a little wolf born in the dungeons of Angband. Morgoth, Sauron's master, took care of him and raised him himself. He fed the animal living flesh with his own hands, even infusing some of his own power into it, causing the wolf to grow to a colossal size, filled with fire and pain. Then he imbued him with a powerful, terrible, and insatiable spirit, and out of it came Carcharoth, the Red Maw, the most terrible of werewolves. He stood a sleepless guard at the gates of Angband until he tried to stop Beren and Luthien, biting off Beren's hand, in which the human lord held one of the 3 Silmarils, and devouring the sacred gem. However, the power of the Silmaril burned him from the inside, and drove him to such a fury that he killed everything in his path, friend or foe. Of all the terrors that ever came from Angband to Beleriand, whether troll, orc, balrog or dragon, the raving Carcharoth was considered the worst. Ultimately, however, he too was to be defeated, the last werewolf to be named in the sagas of Middle-earth. Most of the surviving werewolves were destroyed at the end of the First Age, in the War of Wrath, when Morgoth was overthrown and evil temporarily ended. In the subsequent Second and Third Age of the Sun, Sauron bred werewolves again, and there were said to have been some in his ranks at the time of the War of the Ring, but their numbers were rather small, and they themselves were no more the equals of their forefathers, and in the end, they were insignificant to the outcome of the war. And so they finally died out with the destruction of the One Ring, and only lived on in fairy tales and stories. Thus we conclude this chapter and this video. Did the knowledge surprise you? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed it and would like to learn more of the inner workings of Arda, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of the next chapter in the mysteries of Westerness, and dive with us into the unexplored depths under the lands of Arda, where no dwarf ever came, and even the Balrogs trod carefully. The dark places, where the nameless gods from the times before even Morgoth lived. I have been Irjikor Kuruvane, and I wish you all Namarie Meldonyar.